Okay, when you picture ancient Egypt, what comes to mind, right? Pyramids, pharaohs, these solemn, serious gods carved into stone. It all feels so permanent, so serious. But what if I told you that there's a whole other side to their story? A side that's hidden in their own texts, full of biting satire, social commentary, and what might just be one of the most brilliant acts of literary mockery in all of ancient history. Let's go uncover the secret humor of ancient Egypt. So here's one of history's great puzzles. You've got the biblical story of the Exodus. It's a cornerstone of Western culture, this epic tale of slavery, plagues, a miraculous escape. But then you go and look for that same story in the huge, vast records of the Egyptian Empire, and you find, well, nothing. Not one single hieroglyph that mentions a mass departure of Israelite slaves or the drowning of a pharaoh's entire army. So what gives? Why the silence? Well, the answer might not be in what's missing, but in a simple, universal truth about power. You see, powerful empires get to control the narrative. They're the ones who decide how history gets written. I mean, let's be real, no empire, ancient or modern, likes to put its failures on blast. History is written by the victors, or, at the very least by the government's official scribes. Pharaohs built monuments to their own glory, not their screw-ups. A huge defeat, losing your entire slave workforce, having your army wiped out, that is just not the kind of story a divine king is going to want to immortalize in stone. And if you want the ultimate example of this propaganda machine in action, we just have to look at the reign of Ramesses II in his most famous battle. The Battle of Kadesh was basically an ancient world war. You had two superpowers, Egypt and the Hittites, clashing for control of Syria. We're talking thousands upon thousands of chariots thundering across the plains. This was the biggest, most high-tech warfare of its day. And this is the story Ramesses told everyone. He plastered it on temple walls all across Egypt. Here he is, right? The heroic god king, basically single-handedly turning the tide of battle, his divine power just scattering his enemies. It is a magnificent piece of PR. But while Ramesses was carving images of his glorious win, the Hittite records were telling a very different story, one where the Egyptian army got ambushed and the great pharaoh was forced to retreat. Now, most modern historians think the battle was probably a draw, but for Ramesses, a draw just wasn't going to cut it. He spun it as this epic victory. And the crucial point here is that this story, his propaganda, became famous all over the ancient world. So, what does any of this have to do with the Exodus? Well, this is where the mystery takes a really fascinating turn. According to the scholar Joshua Berman, we've been looking in the completely wrong place. He argues that the oldest part of the Exodus story, the part about crossing the sea, is actually a brilliant piece of literary satire. It's a parody, specifically written to copy and tear down Ramesses' famous Kadesh propaganda. And when you actually put the Egyptian propaganda and the biblical account side by side, whoa, the similarities are absolutely staggering. The structure is almost identical. Both stories follow the exact same plot. In both, an army is terrified, the leader, Ramesses in one, God in the other, steps in to save the day, the enemy gets completely wiped out in water, and the whole thing ends with a victory song. The authors of Exodus basically took the most famous war story of their time and just flipped the entire script. And the details are just as telling. In his account, Ramesses claims the Hittites who ran away drowned in the Orontes River. The temple walls even show their bodies floating in the water. So this image of an enemy army dying in a body of water is central to his whole victory story. Sound familiar? The language is almost a mirror image. Both texts make the exact same claim of total destruction. Ramesses' poem says of the Hittites in the water, "Whoever of them fell, he did not rise again." The book of Exodus says of the Egyptians in the sea, "Not one of them remained." Come on, that is not a coincidence. That is a direct literary callback. But the parody goes even deeper, right down to the specific phrases they used. One of the most common ways pharaohs would describe their own power was with this idea of their strong arm or mighty hand. It was like their brand, their trademark of divine authority. So what does the Exodus story do? It takes that classic pharaoh catchphrase and gives it to its own god. It's a deliberate theft. The text is basically shouting, "You think Pharaoh has a great hand? Oh, you haven't seen anything yet. Let me show you what a real great hand looks like." It's an absolute theological power move. And this kind of imagery was everywhere in Egypt. You see it right here. The Pharaoh, who's the living god Horus on earth, with his right hand raised high, smashing his enemies. This was the ultimate symbol of Egyptian power and their dominion over everyone else. And here comes the final blow. The victory song in Exodus takes that iconic pose, that ultimate symbol of the Pharaoh's might, and gives it directly to the God of Israel. Your right hand, O Lord, shatters the foe. It's the ultimate takedown, a direct challenge to the entire ideological foundation of the Egyptian empire. Now, you might be thinking this kind of subversive humor sounds pretty modern, but it turns out the Egyptians themselves had this rich, thriving culture of satire and dissent. This kind of thing wasn't out of character for the time at all. To find it, we have to look away from the grand temples and, well, look in their garbage. Archaeologists have found thousands of these limestone flakes called ostraca. They were basically the scrap paper of ancient Egypt, used by the actual artists and workers who built the pharaohs' tombs. And what did they draw on these little notepads? The world turned completely upside down. You have mice, the prey, drawn as wealthy masters being served by their cat servants. I mean, it's hilarious, but it's also a really sharp commentary on the social order. This wasn't just idle doodling. It was awake laughing at the rigid world they lived in. And this satirical spirit was just everywhere once you start looking. We have the strike papyrus, which records the first labor strike in history, with workers chanting, "We are hungry." We have Papyrus Anastasii I, where one scribe just verbally destroys another for being terrible at his job. Even their myths had humor. The story of Horus and Seth fighting for the throne is full of absurd, funny tricks. And the famous turn Erotic Papyrus, it isn't just porn. It's a satirical takedown of the rich, showing them as grotesque and ridiculous. So you see, if you only look at the giant statues and the solemn temples, you miss the vibrant, funny, and often defiant humanity of the people who actually lived in their shadows. The real story is so often found in the margins, in the unofficial stuff. It just leaves you wondering, doesn't it? If a foundational story like the Exodus could actually be a brilliant piece of political satire, what else are we missing? What other huge histories might be hiding right there, in plain sight, just waiting in the punchline of an ancient joke for someone to finally get it?